When you think about it, our society has a complicated relationship to UFOs. Lots of opinions out there, of course, but overall, there's a certain nuance going on. And it seems to me that this nuanced attitude toward UFOs is not stable. It's in the process of change. And we are all seeing that change taking place right in front of us. So there have always been those people who immediately dismiss all talk about this subject within the very intellectually rigid world of academia and science. UFOs still remain forbidden. It's very much like the forbidden subjects in books of the medieval times. And they will very rarely discuss this subject openly within that environment. And if you do, your career is still very likely to take a wrong turn for you, even after all these years. But there are many thoughtful people who realize that there is something odd going on with UFOs, and it's been going on for a very long time. And even if they don't know exactly what it is, they know that there's something there. They know that governments are secretive. They've heard about some UFO accounts, sometimes on television specials or in books or on the web. And they've genuinely wondered, like, what could explain some of them? And they know that there's still a lot of ridicule on the subject that's been taking place for their whole life. So they don't normally go talking too openly about it. But I have certainly found that if you scratch the surface with many, many people out there, and if you do it in an environment where they're comfortable to talk, they will open up and they're very interested in this subject. Now, it's fascinating to me that after more than 70 years of officially sanctioned debunking, officially sanctioned ridicule and dismissal, that people still want to know about this subject. Think about that. I believe it's because despite the lifetime of propaganda directed against it, despite the fact that our establishment news culture almost completely ignores it, despite the virtual priests of our officially sanctioned reality telling you there's nothing to it, too many people have experienced it. They know otherwise. They don't have time to spend going deep into the research. Most people work for a living. They have obligations, they have families, they have lives to live and work to do. It's hard to take on a comprehensive reality mind job being directed against them when there's so much else to do. But they know. They feel it in their bones, and they know they are being lied to. They know something important is being concealed from them. And it is. Now, I want to talk about why UFOs are not just an interesting subject and not just something important, but something of very great importance. It's something that matters not just to a few nerdy sci-fi types. How ridiculous that image is. It's a smear, really. No, this subject matters to every single person on this planet because it represents something that will shatter our reality and begin the process of creating something new. Whether that's a good thing or not, by the way, my guess it's probably both, as most dramatic changes are. The thing is, you can't believe something just because you want to believe it. Well, at least not if you're honest about it. You believe something because that's where the evidence leads you. The amount of evidence supporting the reality of UFOs is simply overwhelming. I truly believe most people aren't aware of just how much there is. Over 20 years ago, I began to learn this evidence. The first place I found was, well, that was a real eye-opener, and in many ways is still the most powerful material, is in the great release of documents in the United States during the 1970s and 80s through freedom of information, through the Freedom of Information Act. Now, when I bring this up, I think at this point, some people might just roll their eyes and think, okay, great, boring government documents, who cares? Well, what got my attention right away was the detail provided in these documents. They tell story after story of responsible people dealing with things that were inexplicable to them and freely admitting it, by the way. when absolutely top-level generals state, quote, the phenomena is something real and not visionary or fictitious, or when they describe these objects back in 1947 as, quote, circular or elliptical in shape, flat on bottom and domed on top, when military documents state that leading scientists and local commanders are, quote, perturbed by implications of phenomena, and when FBI reports back in the 1940s were stating that UFOs were considered, quote, top secret by Army and Air Force intelligence, well, then we realize we've stumbled into something, haven't we? When I first discovered that UFOs were being taken seriously in military and intelligence circles back then, back in the 90s when I learned, a few questions jumped out at me right away. One was, well, why isn't this in any standard history book? Because, when you go to a university and you study history, and believe me, I did a great deal, this is entirely absent. It's like it never existed. So at that point, your mind is still trying to find excuses for the absence of something so interesting. And you think, as I thought, well, they must have figured it out and determined that there was some conventional explanation for it. Well, that's when it gets really interesting, because you learn then that no, they never got to a point where this phenomenon was explained away in any satisfactory manner. In fact, just the opposite. Just the opposite. Trying to get this information out of the classified world is like prying it out. But people have to realize that some of the secrets have indeed come out. Enough for anyone who cares to examine that there is incredible technology, incredible science behind these UFOs. And that as far as any of the revealed records show, they don't seem to come from our civilization. In other words, you can put it however you want to put it, we're being visited. Of course, maybe these other beings aren't just visitors. Maybe they live here. The reality of this is known and has been known for many years. It's a cover-up. It's a conspiracy. Have you noticed how the word conspiracy has become a dirty word? It's been like that for a long time, but especially so in the last decade. I'm coming back to that theme soon. I can assure you I'll be talking about that. But for now, just please keep in mind that conspiracies and cover-ups are normal activities for organizations engaged in the struggle for wealth and power. It's totally normal. Corporations have trade secrets. They don't like to share their trade secrets. They will steal secrets whenever it seems safe to do so. Governments are even worse. Knowledge is their currency, and secrecy is their weapon. We all know this. And yet the media that they control, that works hand in glove with the power elite, has made a concerted effort to convince you that conspiracies don't exist. After all, we live in a free society, a democracy. They like to emphasize that point these days. And conspiracies would always be found out and exposed in such a society. But in fact, the news media has been complicit with this cover-up since the beginning. I've given many history lessons on how that's happened, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. But I will stress that, just as I started with here, there are many high-level and intelligent people in this world and in that classified community that they know the truth. And these people do talk about it. They talk about it quietly. They talk about it to the people that they trust. I am constantly astonished by the naive, almost childish opinions expressed by some of the talking heads in our society when it comes to UFOs. Some of these people who are celebrities and famous scientists, you'd think that they would know better. You'd think that they get around enough to have had some of the conversations that I have had. And I'm quite certain that I don't get around as much as they do. And yet the information has come to me many times that it's real and they're here, that this is important. How is it that you get these public figures who constantly come back to the tired cliches of jokes about little green men or denial of the obvious facts that we're not alone here on this planet, that there are others, that they are working this world and interacting with us in ways that are important and covert? Because yes, within the classified world, people know. The conversations are more widespread than many people realize. These secrets won't be suppressed forever. I've talked in the past about my quiet conversation with Apollo 14 astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell. He told me more than once, very calmly and clearly, that he knew explicitly of programs to study alien technology and alien bodies. And the fact is, he's not the only one within his circle of acquaintances who knew this fact. I've spoken to others, and one day their names will be out. There is a quiet community out there right now of extremely well plugged in people who know the truth and are trying to figure out a way safely to reveal it. And when I mean safe, I don't mean safe for society, because there is no way that that will ever be a smooth ride. So please don't expect that. But I mean safe for themselves. For the record, I've spoken to more than one individual within those circles, and they are all concerned about how to tell the world without significant repercussions coming down on them. Now, some people will say, well, these folks should just be martyrs for the truth and let the hammer come down. Well, that's easy for them to say. Edgar Mitchell once told me that the people who provided him with this sensitive information did so at great risk professionally, personally, and he said risk to their families. It's not easy to be in this position, but what's impressive to me is how much that many of these people do tell to others, despite the risks involved, because information is slowly seeping out. When this reality truly comes out, not just in drips and drabs, but with force and power, and it will, then we are looking at revolutionary implications. And there will be people in positions of power who will have to answer some very uncomfortable questions. We are seeing a change of culture taking place right now with regard to UFOs. It's sinking in, I think, to more and more people that something is happening. Times are changing. We're looking at a major sea change underway right now. Now, to those of us who've been in this subject for so long, it can seem agonizingly slow, but you've got to step back and you've got to have some perspective. No change this big or this profound can truly happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time. Over the course of years, yeah, but it's happening. A decade ago, I don't think that I saw that change happening, but I do think I do now. For understandable reasons, there are people who are letting information come out and they're trying to do it as, let's say, gradually and safely as they can. It's a reasonable tactic, but ultimately, the UFO subject won't be tamed. Not even if you try to rebrand it as UAP and try to make it seem a little safer. Because let's be clear, UAP sounds a lot safer than UFO. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because the reality signified by the word, whatever word you want to use, is truly an out of control reality. And there is nothing we can do to change that. Sorry, that is how it is. The best thing we can do in these incredible times is to get our A game on. And that means educate yourself. That means identify the deceptions of the establishment media that is part of a control system. It means being brave and exploring the subject of UFOs without fearing any stigma. Individually, most of us can't move things along any faster than they're already going. History is like a river, and it just moves at its own pace. The best most of us can do is navigate through that river in order to arrive at the best destination. And what does that mean? It means basically that the end of UFO secrecy is coming. It might be in 10 years, it might be this year. Ask yourself, what will your life be like when it comes? What opportunities might that mean for you? What changes are likely to come? Well, I've been asking these questions myself for many years, and somehow I doubt that most of us can predict what lies ahead. I certainly doubt my own capabilities in that matter. Very few of us are ever really prepared for the future. But it comes just the same, whether you're prepared for it or not. And somehow I believe that we will figure this one out together. Well, that's all I got this time, so I want to thank you for listening. And as always, I'm grateful for your support of my work, however you are able to do that. If you like this YouTube channel, please subscribe. That helps me a great deal. You can see the rest of my work at Richard Dolan Press and Richard Dolan Members. Catch you next time. Thanks.